محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Thank you all for coming to our Friday program. We can do this without you, and inshallah may Allah reward you in this life and in the next. We have an amazing program for you tonight, and hopefully you'll learn a few things, maybe more. And starting us off is Brother David with a talk on communication, so please welcome him with the loudest of your salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm going to talk to you about communication, and I've been asked very specifically to include my revert story, so I'll include that a little bit, but I've only got 20 minutes, and so I've only put one slide in on that, if that's okay. I was, a long time ago, not a Muslim, about a year ago, and let's go to the actual slide on that. There we go. Thank you. That's better. That's a photo of the university. I was working in the library there, and just being a library assistant. And there was a sister who came and saw me and started a conversation about really exciting political issues, not in any way related to Islam or something like that. We were talking about communication and politics and leadership. That was a very big topic that came up. And it was a very, interesting, engaging conversation. And that led to a series of conversations where this particular sister would come and see me each week after her class in the library. We'd just have discussions about things. And she was another communication student, one of these people who study communication like me. I've been studying communication for a long time now, since 2001 at Victoria University, all of that time, and in various courses and things like that. And it's a very interesting space architecturally that we were in, this kind of library and learning commons environment. And this led me to think that all of the things that I thought about Islam, which I'd only heard of maybe a couple of times in my life, the first time being when I was a little kid and my parents showed me the movie Gandhi, and I slept through most of it, but I asked them what it was about, and they said, well, it's in India, and the Hindus and the Muslims are killing each other, and some guy tries to make peace. That was their explanation. So, what's a Muslim? Oh, they're people who believe in a religion. Oh, okay. And another time was September 11, 2001, made the news. And that was about all I knew. And, some of the images, bearded guys, a lot of bearded guys. I didn't have a beard back then. I had a big, fat, round, pudgy, white face. And that was... Thanks. that was the extent of my knowledge. But what was I looking at? I was looking at ways to find more truth. And what was I studying? Well, I was studying communication, and that was absolutely central to why I became a Muslim. Why some of the things that we talked about triggered a whole lot of very big dialogues in my mind that went on and on for a long time afterwards, and which led to a lot of other conversations with a lot of other people. And none of whom, of course, impressed me with their intellect to such an extent, but all of which led to me learning little things. A lot of little things led to bigger things. And next slide, please. And it was cross-cultural communication or intercultural communication. Now, was it really? Yes. Is there such a thing as communication that is not intercultural? Do you know what the difference between cross-cultural and intercultural is? Anyone? Hands up. Okay. Intercultural communication is where people with different cultural backgrounds are talking to each other. And cross-cultural communication is where you do a study and you compare the way that people in different cultural backgrounds or different groups talk to each other. So when you talk about a conversation between two people, you don't say it's a cross-cultural conversation. People in the medical profession seem to often get that confused. No offence. But you call it an intercultural, inter meaning between, cross meaning, well, transcending or comparing or something like that. So people have dedicated a lot of time and effort to studying cross-cultural and intercultural communication, both of them. What you've got up there is cross-cultural communication. It's one of the first really big studies, and really the only really big quantitative study on attributes across different cultures, communication attributes. Was done by Hofstede, and it was first done in about 1980, and it's been repeated a number of times, but the first time that he did it, he just took all of the employees of a very large multinational corporation, and they were in different countries, and they had the nationality of each of those countries, and he was able to gather a lot of data, huge amounts of data, with thousands and thousands of participants, like a sample size of a couple of thousand in each of the countries. And he came up with all of these attributes that he was going to compare. They're very arbitrary. You could come up with other axes that you were going to compare people along. You could come up with different ways that you were going to describe culture. But let's look at a couple of them. Okay, an interesting one is individualism versus collectivism. Has anyone come across this? I'm getting nods from my fellow student of communication, but not really anyone else. Okay, so in each society, according to Hofstede and a lot of other communication scholars, you can say that to a greater or lesser extent, we prioritise our connectedness with the people immediately around us. So if we're in a very individualist society, then our personal philosophy will have a greater emphasis on who am I? What do I do? What do I want out of life? And if you're a member of a collectivist society, then you might say, okay, who are we as a community? Who are we as a family? And what are our priorities? And, oh, I'm a person, so I can contribute to those things and I can participate in those things. But if I want to know what I should be doing, I've also got to refer to the other people in that situation. I've also got to say, okay, what does my mother think of this? What does my father think of this? If I do this, will the neighbours gossip about me? That's a big thing. And if you come from an individualist society, a relatively individualist society, because we all the different societies and all the different cultures, if you're comparing them along this axis, there's no extreme where it's 100% individualist, because that would be like, well, you'd be a cold-blooded psycho. You'd determine what your actions were going to be without any reference to anyone around you. But at the same time, there isn't anybody at the other extreme, perhaps, who only cares about the people around them and doesn't think of themselves as a human being who has rights and value and things like this. So, this is one line of comparison that we can make between different societies and cultures. And it's one that is one of the more interesting ones to make. And it's something that we take into consideration when we go into an intercultural communication scenario. We keep our mind open to the fact that the other person who we're speaking to may have different values and priorities, not because they're stupid, but because they are from a society that's at a different point in this scale, and therefore, to a greater extent, they prioritise their family and their community, or to a lesser extent they do that, and to a greater extent they prioritise themselves. So, for example, I met somebody who worries a great deal if her neighbours say things, gossip, things like this. And when making a decision, this is the first thing that she'll think about. She'll think, oh, okay, if I do this, what will my neighbours think? Won't people look down on me? Or won't people think I'm proud? Or won't people think, like this? Okay, I'm coming from a Western scenario, and I think that their behaviour in gossiping about her is inappropriate. I'm from a relatively individualist culture. So when I say to her, oh, why do you care about them? I don't get it, why do you care? All they're going to do is talk to each other and say stupid things. And after all, when you were doing the opposite of that, they were still saying stupid things. What difference does it make? But that's because I don't actually understand any of the intricacies of how that community works. That's my ignorance there. And all of these actually, power distance. This is another axis of comparison, if you like. So we go into a communication scenario, and we say, okay, your government just oppressed you. They just put in a law that says that you can't walk down the street without being asked for your passport with your visa by people in uniforms who are not even police, and this is okay. And you ask the person, are you going to tolerate that? And they say, well, yeah, the government. What can I do? This is a high power distance culture that the person must be coming from. They are thinking, okay, the government, the structures that surround their life with power, those things, they're beyond me. There's a big distance between me and them. I don't participate in those things. I don't shape those things, no. Okay? And there are other cultures, as we saw today in Melbourne, where people take a very different attitude. They say, oh, people think they can harass us in the street because they've got a uniform on. The government think that they can racially profile us because some of us look different, so we might not have a visa. And the people take to the streets and protest about those things because that they consider is part of participating in their culture and their society. Okay? So that kind of behaviour we would say is a low power distance.
7 minutes.
Thanks. That kind of culture we would say is a low power distance cultural attribute. Okay? So, when somebody goes into a situation where they're communicating between people who have got different backgrounds, different cultures, now it doesn't mean they came from different countries necessarily, but people get their culture in a whole lot of ways, and that's a big topic for another lecture. But, there was a British sociologist called John Law, and he said, I saw this, he wrote an essay about this, he said, I saw this picture of an aeroplane in the paper. It was a new British fighter jet. He's a British guy, so he's reading British newspapers about those things, and he was very disturbed by it. He said, well, at first, my first reaction was, I was excited. I was like, whoa, it's so big and powerful and graceful. And then he slapped himself and he was like so ashamed. Why would I like this thing? I'm anti-war, I'm left-wing, I hate those things. Hang on, what's wrong with me? And so what he wrote about it was, okay, this is an image. It's a piece of communication. The design, the way it looks, all of these things, and the way it's been photographed. And this is calling to me based on a whole lot of attributes that I have within myself. Part of it's calling to me based on the fact that I have particular values for aesthetic qualities. I like things to look graceful and beautiful and things like this. But at the same time, another part of it is also calling to me and saying, this represents all of these things that I don't like. Okay? And there was a contrast in that instance between the reaction that he was getting from certain attributes and the reaction that he was getting from other attributes of the same thing. When we are talking to a person, we are no more in control of our first impression and how it makes us feel, and of the process that subconsciously we are going through of coming to terms with what imagery there is in front of us. The person looks a certain way, they're a certain age, they act a certain way, they talk a certain way. There's a lot of communication going on. It's not just the few words that we hear from them. All they said was hello or salam. And there are conflicting feelings that we have when we're communicating with the person. And somehow we've got to make sense of those things. And some of those feelings come from... Can you go back 2 slides? No, 1 slide, sorry. That's better. So some of those conflicting and very compelling feelings, the assumptions that come into our mind, well, this person must not know about that because they look like that. Or this person must eat curry because they look Indian. And more, on a more subtle level, we're aware of all of these things. We're aware that different cultures have different power distance and collectivism and things like this, even though we haven't thought about it very much. And all of those things are things that are going to have an effect on how we're reacting to them, and at the same time how they're reacting to us. It's going to affect how the communication plays out. And do I have very much time left? Should I go into another?
Not much. You have about 5 minutes left.
Right. Okay, no worries. That's good. I'll come back and talk more about it. Okay? But I just wanted to impress upon everybody the importance, and I'll go forward a couple of slides now. Oh, look at this. This guy. Very, very famous, iconic image, right? American guy. You can tell because of his hat and things. looks like an American flag, pointing at somebody and saying, "I want you." Well, this is along the lines of what the jet fighter plane was doing to the British sociologist. But it wasn't saying, "I want you," because you're in front of me and I'm pointing at you. It was saying, "I want you because you have these attributes. I want you." This one's saying, "I want you" because you're an American nationalistic person. And you can tell that because he's an American nationalistic person. And it's within a particular social context. It was a war poster. Okay? But there is a huge amount of communication that is about this getting somebody's attention based on an attribute. The attribute can be their name, obviously, but you only get one person's attention like that. Talit, I got your attention, right? Did anyone else care? No. No. Their title. Their title might be, I don't know, students. I get a lot of people. Company CEOs. Anyone? Hands up. No. Then you've got groups of people. And the groups, that's a really big and complicated thing, because how do you group people? Is it up to you? Is it up to them? But just for example, if I was to say Muslims, yeah, got a few hands up. All right. If I said people who drink beer, not a single one. Well, this is really good. Alhamdulillah, that's good. Okay, but this is what we do when we advertise. This is what we do when we communicate through the mass media, and this is what we do when we create a piece of communication, like our meme on the internet or our post on Facebook. Oh, memes. What is a meme calling out to you with? This is the term meme comes from famous atheist and popular-ish figure, Richard Dawkins, who he had this idea that knowledge is transferred through little bits of shared understanding meeting each other and then having a little bit extra attached. That's where the term meme comes from. A meme gets your attention because it has something in it that you look at because you think, oh, I understand something about that. Oh, it's got a cat. I like cats. I'm going to look and read what the writing is. Oh, it's got a celebrity. I'm into celebrities. Or, oh, it's got Arabic writing. I know Arabic. Let me have a look. So, and then you've got interest, and that leads on to framing, which is a big topic. So I'm going to wrap it up. Okay? Any questions?
When's the assignment due?
Sorry, I couldn't work.
Oh, that's a good one.
Can you repeat that to us?
He said, when's the assignment due? I think I think we're going to have a few more lectures before we start setting assignments. Yeah, but look, this is the biggest problem, the biggest issue of our time, this communication thing. I mean, you talked about the knowledge to make a nuclear weapon. Communication is much more dangerous than any nuclear weapon, much more. And yet it can be, like nuclear power, used for good. Okay.